In the long history of shonen manga, and writing in general, many characters fall under certain tropes. Whether that is a good or a bad thing can differ between readers. On one side, it can bring a sense of familiarity since liking a specific archetype of character can often make a story more enjoyable. On the other, these tropes can often make a character feel as though they have less of an identity. Within the scope of the new generation of shonen manga, the authors have taken some of these familiar tropes and have applied some twists to give their protagonists a familiar yet innovative feel. In my opinion, no other protagonist represents this archetype better than Yuji Itadori. Most of the points I'll focus on throughout this video will revolve around the events that happened during the Shibuya incident, the aftermath, and the Culling game, since you can definitely tell that Yuji is not the same after the Shibuya incident. But before we get into that, I want to give you an idea of who Yuji Itadori is. Yuji is, for the most part, a kind and optimistic young man. He is eager to try new things like joining the occult club or enjoying the sights around Tokyo when he first arrives, and is often one of the more comedic characters, especially when paired with Nobara Kugisaki or Satoru Gojo. Although at times, these comedic moments have the opposite effect on their audience. He's also extremely physically gifted, to the point that the school coach changes Yuji's club application from the occult club to track and field, and there are even rumors going around his school that he's won the Ninja Warrior Challenge. Yuji cares about the well-being of others, even if they have no relationship with him, to the point where he mourns the lives of people he's never met, and even feels remorse for the lives he's taken, even if he didn't know they were human. He often doesn't pay much mind to details about his past, like who his parents are, and more often than not, doesn't have some elaborate reason as to why he does the things that he does, or likes the things that he likes. His grandfather's final words: help people. It doesn't have to be all the time, just whenever you can. You may feel lost, don't expect gratitude. Just help them. Become the sole drive of his endeavors. He is stubborn when it comes to achieving this and any of his other goals. He will often put himself in danger if it means helping and protecting others, even at his own life's expense. Like when he jumped to the 4th floor of his school to help Fushiguro Megumi fight the Grade 2 curse that attacked his classmates. It was this very event that turned Yuji into Sukuna's vessel after he made the choice to swallow the finger the cursed spirit was after. He's extremely dependable, so much that Megumi was sure that Yuji would win in an all-out brawl without cursed energy against a powerful Grade 1 sorcerer, Aoi Todo. A quick learner that can adapt to any situation he's presented and any instructions he's given, such as the time he learned how to perform the Black Flash from Todo himself. After swallowing Sukuna's finger, he is immediately sentenced to an execution with the alternate option of finding and swallowing all of the fingers first before he's executed. From his encounters with cursed spirits and major antagonists like Mahito and Sukuna, we see that Yuji will become extremely angry towards pure malice. When confronting Mahito after he used his cursed technique, Idol Transfiguration, to transform his new friend Junpei into a monster, Yuji even gives off an aura of sheer violence with the intent to kill Mahito. This summary is here just to give an idea of the type of character Yuji is when we first meet him. And I believe he's extremely likable. He's funny when he wants to be. He's no genius outside of combat, but he never gives off the aura of an idiot. Reliable and a team player, he'll put himself through any situation if it means helping others. However, this isn't anything new, and that isn't a bad thing. Plenty of characters have some combination of all of these traits to varying degrees. So what makes Yuji Itadori so different? From this point onward, I will be talking strictly about the events that transpired during the Shibuya incident from Yuji's perspective. This is all within the territory of spoilers. After Satoru Gojo had been sealed in the prison realm by Kenjaku, one of the main antagonists, Yuji and all of the other sorcerers had to jump into action to stop the spree of curses and transfigured humans that were rampaging. with his first task being to let everyone know that Gojo has been sealed. On his way, he encounters some transfigured humans attacking civilians, with one of them begging to be killed. Yuji dispatches all of them while heading up to the top of a building to announce to all of the other sorcerers about Gojo's current status. As a reminder, Yuji isn't necessarily okay with killing humans. He's shown hesitation in the past, and even though he's seemingly okay with dispatching them at this point, it weighs a heavy burden on him. After reuniting with Nanami, his mentor, and being given their next objective, which is to find a way of dispelling the curtain preventing sorcerers from entering, Yuji and Megumi fight against a sorcerer named Jiro. While the battle doesn't last long, the pair decide to split up to cover more ground, with Yuji quoting the very words Megumi told him during their fight against Hanami: "If you die, I'll kill you." This is the last time we see the old Yuji. He runs into Chozo, a death-painting womb, a human and curse hybrid, who wants to kill him because Yuji and Nobara killed his little brothers. He asks if his little brothers had left any final words, and with a sad look on his face, Yuji replies, "No, but they did cry." As they begin to fight and Chozo has the upper hand with his curse technique, blood manipulation, we get to see Yuji's genius when it comes to fighting. He's quick to assess the situation and puts himself in scenarios where he baits the opponent into attacking. As the fight continues and Yuji's back is against the wall after taking a direct hit to a vital organ, instead of becoming distracted with notions of pain or death, his resolve improves. Yuji finally understands his role. I want to make it clear that while we as the reader know that Yuji is the main character, he doesn't think of himself as the protagonist in any sort of way. It's easy to see why. In a world where your teacher is also the strongest sorcerer, and an entire portion of the manga is relegated to a flashback of the events that led to Gojo becoming the strongest, Geto becoming a villain, and much more, Yuji doesn't really defeat anyone. He needed Sukuna's help to defeat the special grade curse on his first mission, and ended up dying for it. He couldn't save Junpei or finish off Mahito, even with Nanami's help. Hanami, one of the disaster curses, ended up escaping him and Todo, so up until this point, he had only defeated Enzo and Kechizu, Chozo's brothers, with Nobara's help, and Jiro with Megumi's help. One could see Gojo being sealed as a good thing, not only for plot progression, but also for Yuji's development, since up until now he hasn't had that many chances to shine on his own, but Gege Akutami, the author, had different plans for our boy. Chozo ended up being one step ahead of Yuji at the end of their fight, and defeated Yuji. Before finishing him off, fake memories began to flood his mind, and he begins to believe that Yuji is his brother. As he leaves and Yuji lies there passed out, Jogo ends up finding Yuji and feeds him 10 of Sukuna's fingers. This allows Sukuna to take full control of the body for a long time, enough for him to wreak all the havoc that he needs. While I won't be going into the exact events that transpire after Sukuna is awakened, I want to focus on one major event. Sukuna activates his domain expansion in the middle of Shibuya during his fight with Mahoraga, Megumi's strongest Shikigami. Everything and everyone within a 140-meter range was completely annihilated, and Yuji was forced to watch as it all happened. The moment Sukuna gives Yuji back control, he immediately drops to his knees and starts vomiting and crying, with the only words he can muster being, "Just die already. Just me. Just me." Even though Sukuna's actions are his own and Yuji had zero control over the events that had transpired, all of this began the moment he ate the finger. In his mind, it's because of that first action that all of these people died, and Yuji considers himself nothing short of a murderer. With everyone dead, he can only tell himself, "I need to move. I need to fight." To give himself the semblance of an idea that somebody might still be out there, and heads back to see if there's anything else he can do. All I can say, from here on out, it does not get better for him. While running back through the train station, Yuji finds Mahito ready to kill Nanami. With a smile on his face and his final words, "You've got it from here," Mahito destroys Nanami. With an initial burst of rage and taunting from Mahito, Yuji recollects himself and thinks, "You are a Jujutsu sorcerer. As their fight unfolds, Yuji does his best to kill Mahito as soon as possible, with Nobara eventually joining him as she fights Mahito's clone. And Yuji recognizes that Mahito was being affected by her curse technique, even though she wasn't around. This reminds him that he isn't alone, and for a brief moment, he has hope. However, much to their dismay, this is what Mahito wanted, and he baits Nobara into coming towards their fight to kill her in front of Yuji. It was at this point that Yuji just couldn't take it anymore. Even the narrator goes on to say, losing to Chozo, Sukuna's rampage, Kento Nanami's death, Yuji Itadori's resolve had reached its limits a long time ago. It's heartbreaking at this point for one person to suffer so much at the hands of those who would laugh at his misfortune. Mahito even goes on to land a black flash and beats him down to a pulp while taunting him about his ideology. You are me, Yuji Itadori. I will kill without a second thought, just like how you save people without a second thought. Even when Todo and Nita had arrived to help out with Mahito, Yuji couldn't do much else other than lie there in a fetal position. All he wanted to do was to help more people after Sukuna's killing spree, while Sukuna's words, "because of you, people will die," flood his mind. As a reader, it's common to see the main protagonists go through adversity that will eventually test their resolve. Watching them overcome said adversity with a smile on their face is satisfying, but this case is completely different. Yuji, up until now, has been rolling with the punches. He was marked for execution. Relying on Sukuna ended up with him dying. He watched as his friend was transformed into a monster and subsequently died. And the Kyoto class tried to assassinate him, but this is truly one thing after another. He didn't beat Chozo, he couldn't stop Sukuna, he couldn't save Nanami or Nobara. Yuji at this point can't even forgive himself. Todo reminds Yuji that he is a jujutsu sorcerer, that he has been entrusted with a job, and that until he finds his answer, he should never stop moving. As Todo fights Mahito on his own, Nita uses his curse technique to fix Yuji's wounds, and even mentions that he was able to fix the damage done to Nobara, as it was still pretty recent. Even though her condition didn't get any better, he assured Yuji that it's not a 0% chance she'll survive, which all combined gave Yuji enough conviction to rejoin the fight. With the thoughts of his mentor and new resolve found, Yuji is able to land a black flash on Mahito. With their fight coming to a conclusion, Yuji reflects on Mahito's words. With a blank stare on his face, he tells Mahito, "I'm you. I'm gonna kill you. Even if you come back as another curse, I'll kill you. Change your name, change your form, I'll kill you again. I don't need to find a meaning or a reason. In the grand scheme of things, I'm probably nothing more than a cog. That's my role in all of this." It's normal to see a character develop as the story progresses, seeing their goals, personality, and maturity evolve into what they are now. But there's always a sense of familiarity that they maintain. In Yuji's case, this sense of familiarity is less apparent. These two illustrations that Gege Akutami made show a distinct difference in Yuji, from before he enrolled in Jujutsu High to the aftermath of the Shibuya incident. That carefree smile is gone. All that's left is a stoic, 1,000-yard stare. He knows that Sukuna is plotting something involving Megumi. He believes that he killed all of those people. He's unsure of whether or not he deserves to live. And he's willing to help out Yuta and the other surviving sorcerers because his strength is needed. Tasked with recruiting third year's Jujutsu sorcerer Hakari alongside Megumi, Yuji gets into a fight with the upperclassmen. During their one-sided brawl, Hakari wonders how Yuji withstood 3 unguarded blows. He explains to the upperclassmen that he is just a cog, and cogs have a function. His function is to get rid of curses, and if Hakari is necessary for that, he won't give up until he agrees. From the moment Yuji understood his role while battling Chozo, he realized that he wasn't the hero, the protagonist. He didn't need to be the one who saves Gojo, he just had to make sure that they could get to him even if it meant dying. If the only way he can help others at this point is by killing curses, that is what he'll have to do. If getting Hakari to join is the best way for him to kill curses, then he'll do just that. It's an interesting approach to write your main protagonist this way. Yuji started off relatively impressive when compared to the average person. His allies were impressed by his physical capabilities, and he could take a beating to say the least, but Yuji stopped feeling strong around the time he met Mahito. There were clearly things he lacked, especially when it came to curse technique. As Gojo said, 80% of jujutsu sorcery is all innate talent, and Yuji wasn't a sorcerer until he ate that finger. While he is an expert at hand-to-hand combat and can adapt extremely quickly mid-fight or through minimal instructions, he often feels underpowered, especially after Gojo gets sealed. As stronger characters appear during the Culling game, Yuji more often than not is just barely keeping up with the higher tiers like Maki, who gains the full power of the heavenly restriction, Yuta, who still has Rika and is considered second only to Gojo, Hakari, Kashimo the god of lightning, Sukuna, and even Kenjaku. Yuji feels like he doesn't have anything in his current arsenal that can give him an edge when compared to all of these powerful sorcerers. As the Culling games unfold, Yuji meets Higuruma, a brand new sorcerer whose abilities are awakened through the Culling game. Higuruma is special in that he can use domain expansion, the pinnacle of jujutsu sorcery, as a part of his curse technique, which creates a courtroom where the accused must undergo a trial where if they are found guilty, they lose control over their ability to manipulate cursed energy. Yuji does lose the first trial, however, I want to focus on the second trial, the mass murder of all the inhabitants of Shibuya while Sukuna was in control. Higuruma had evidence that it was in fact Sukuna who had killed all those people, and that Yuji was innocent. However, Yuji still pleaded guilty. Higuruma, up until this point, claimed all people were weak and ugly, but he couldn't understand why Yuji would plead guilty to a crime that he did not commit under the eyes of the law. He is reminded of why he got into law in the first place, and ended his hostility by sitting down with Yuji and talking. He asks if he had ever killed anyone, and when Yuji agrees, he says, "Didn't it feel awful?" It's not often that we get to see this kind of interaction, even if it was brief, where the protagonist reflects on the lives of the people they have killed, even if the circumstances may have somewhat or somehow justified it. It's through this interaction that Higuruma joins the other sorcerers and helps in ending the Culling games. I want to go over one last thing, which is the relationship between Yuji and his inner demon, Sukuna. Having an inner demon isn't anything groundbreaking when it comes to shonen manga. The inner demon trope can be seen as a hindrance or antithesis to the main protagonist, but could also be used as a source of power. At some point in the story, they come together to fight against the greater threat, or the demon helps out for the sake of their own gain/survival, with the protagonist eventually befriending said demon. That isn't the case whatsoever in Jujutsu Kaisen. Sukuna is referred to as a calamity. He lives only for himself and sees everyone else as nothing more than mud. Everything he does is for the sake of his own pleasure or interest. From the first moment Yuji asks Sukuna for help, he refuses and threatens Yuji, saying that he'll kill Megumi and Nobara the moment he switches. Eventually, Yuji does grant Sukuna control after Megumi gives him a signal that he and Nobara had safely escaped, and Sukuna immediately thinks up of a way to attack them once he learns Yuji can't switch back. He chooses to rip out Yuji's heart to prevent him from switching back at the cost of death, but eventually Yuji does switch, knowing what was at stake. Through a conversation they had inside the heart, Yuji and Sukuna make a binding vow that would allow Sukuna control over Yuji's body for 1 minute when he says "in chain," at the cost of not harming anyone else. There was a second condition which made Yuji forget about the binding vow. Even with these conditions, Yuji would soon learn that Sukuna isn't someone he would ever rely on. When Mahito had transformed Junpei's soul, Yuji begged Sukuna to do something about it, but Sukuna refused, calling him a pathetic and stupid brat. Sukuna would share a laugh with Mahito at Yuji's expense, with Yuji only reminding himself that they would only ever be curses. Well into the Culling game, Yuji reflects on past events and is resolved to die after all of this is over by taking over half of Sukuna's remains with him. However, Sukuna had different plans and says "in chain," taking over Yuji's body and breaking off a finger to feed Megumi. This didn't break the rules since Yuji wasn't included in the binding vow. With Sukuna now in a different body, he doesn't even hesitate to attack Yuji, and Yuji wonders why Sukuna has to spread misery. He is reminded that Sukuna will only ever be a curse, and while he is able to land a hit on him, thanks to Megumi's intervention, Sukuna gets away while laughing at how pitiful Yuji looks. Yuji is later asked if he would still fight even though Sukuna isn't in him anymore, and Yuji acknowledges that it wouldn't matter since he never helped him anyway. And this is true. Every single time Yuji needed Sukuna's help, he would be laughed at, or Sukuna would threaten to kill everyone around him. Yuji stopped relying on Sukuna very early on, and anytime Sukuna would take over, as entertaining as it may have been as a viewer, it would only result in more and more people dying. All of this has led up to the ending of chapter 238, where Yuji is falling from a giant block of ice in the sky alongside Higuruma to fight Sukuna, with a slightly new look, and Sukuna wondering what he could possibly accomplish. Rereading the entire series just to make this video has given me a different perspective on the series as a whole. Jujutsu Kaisen is a different kind of shonen, and Yuji is a different kind of protagonist. And it's extremely refreshing, to say the least, where most protagonists go through moments of hardship that eventually strengthens their resolve and eventually transforms them into this powerful, mature version of themselves. Gege Akutami chose to take a different approach. The world of Jujutsu Kaisen may have in some ways started off in a more light-hearted approach with a creepy twist, but it's evolved into a story that in some ways mirrors the harsh truths of life. Our actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences do affect others. Everything he did was to fulfill his grandfather's final request, and he's only suffered since then. He learned quickly that this world he was forced into wasn't going to be kind to him, and in his mind, his actions, no matter the good intentions, ended up getting thousands of people killed. He no longer sees himself as someone who can make a difference, but instead as a tool whose actions can only help the greater good. The world of Jujutsu Kaisen doesn't revolve around him, and whether he's alive or dead, will keep moving forward. He's been broken down and laughed at more than once, and even though I don't know where the series will go moving forward, I hope our favorite Jujutsu sorcerer gets the happy ending he genuinely deserves.